Hello friends, I'm starting my journey for Princess Peach by making a corset today. This part of the process was the most daunting for me in the beginning, so ideally I wanted to rip the band-aid off and get it over with as quickly as possible. I'm using TV 110 as my base for this corset. After a decent amount of research, this was recommended as easy to understand and put together, and since I'd already had experience with Truly Victorian, I felt pretty good about using their patterns. To start with, I'm making a mock-up of my corset using an old sheet. Since mock-ups don't need to look pretty, I marked my lines with Sharpie and cut them out doubled up for speed. When fitting for this pattern, they recommend sizing individual parts and matching your pattern pieces with these adjusted measurements, kind of like a simplified version of grading seams. This process can take a very long time, but being accurate is important to the overall effect of the corset. Small changes in the measurements can make a large difference when actually fitting on the person, since they are meant to be so closely fitted to the human body. I found that when I'm mainly focusing on speed, a rotary cutter is a great tool. I'm not especially dexterous with small areas like the matching marks, but since I mainly just wanted to get this guy done, it was super handy. I did swap over about a third of the way through to what I call my toucan scissors, because the blades of the scissors kind of look like a toucan beak, because I felt I wasn't getting enough control for these pattern markings and wanted something more precise. Once everything has been cut out, I transition over to my sewing machine and start assembling. The final corset will be made with what's called a double welt method, or sandwich method as far as I can tell, but for the purposes of fitting, I went for a very basic one-layer assembly. I then take everything over to my very, very old ironing board and give it a good press. I struggled heavily with this part because I didn't have a tailor's ham and had no way of pressing the curved edges in a way that effectively maximized their curvature. Before I made my final corset, I did cave and purchase a tailor's ham. For the purposes of this mock-up, it was enough. Okay, so I have finished the mock-up. I have it sewn shut in the back with a approximate 3-inch gap and then pinned up at the front just to make everything easier. I was worried that this pattern wasn't going to have enough waist reduction because I just wasn't sure what the ease was going to be, but as it turns out, it fits pretty ding-dang well. I don't have any bones in it, so obviously this is very floppy. I went with the D cup because I sit between a C and a D usually, but I'm thinking this might be too big. I also plan on using cutlets with it for a little bit of extra support and oomph, but I don't know if that's going to be enough to fill everything out. I might end up taking a little bit either out of here or out of the side. I'm not 100% certain on that yet. I'm going to do a couple sit tests as well to make sure that this isn't gonna, poke me in the groin and that the hips are sitting about where they need to. I might need to split the hip and add a little bit there. I don't really have much of a waist. My body just goes directly into my hips. So it's wanting to tuck in here, which I like, but then it's also wanting to tuck in my hips, and I'm not sure how supportive that's going to be and if it's going to dig into me. I also can't answer a lot of these questions because I don't have the boning in, and there's going to be a little bit of guesswork, but c'est la vie. But yeah, so for the moment I'm going to play around with this, see how it suits me, and go from there. The back, oof, I don't know if I can do this, hang on. We're going to take an adventure together. The back sits pretty high up and is sitting pretty good, so I don't really have any complaints about that. But yeah, so we're just gonna go from here, I guess. So it is day 2 of me trying to make this, and I have decided to sew myself into it in an attempt to get a better fit. So that's what we're gonna do now. While I do the very silly job of sewing myself into a garment, I'd like to make a couple notes. If you are making a mock-up, add bones to it. I was being precious about my whalebone, but could easily have gone out and gotten zip ties to use, or used ridgeline, or something else to get a better idea. A lot of the issues that I have with this mock-up is because I was not able to get a good idea of what the fit would have been. I have since joined a group called Foundations Revealed, which I'm sure many of you are aware of, and they have recommended even just taping in the bones with tape to get a better idea for the fit, something that I definitely wish I had done on this mock-up. My boyfriend Sean is just helping me measure the length of what my possible busk could be. I was worried that the 14-inch busk recommended in the pattern would be too long when I was sitting, so I had to measure and I did a couple of fit tests while sitting to make sure. Alright, so I have now sewn up my bodice. It has obviously gotten a little crooked here at the bottom because one side is being bunched up a bit. But that's okay. I'm not too worried about it for the fitting purposes. I do think, now that I'm back at it again, my hip area might need to come out a little bit more, but I'm not. My hips are down here and they're not being like pushed on. I'm just not sure. I don't know. And then I'm going to attempt to put cutlets and to see if that's going to affect the boob area. Obviously this is soft material, so it's not going to have the support I need it to, but it might give me a better idea. Maybe? Alright, so on further inspection, I think these side areas need to be taken in a little bit for the best fit. So I probably could have gone with the C cup for this. Yeah, that's fitting better. For this last part, I am just taking apart those marked up and adjusted pieces from my mock-up and adding those adjustments onto the original pattern pieces. If you buy your patterns pre-printed, I probably wouldn't recommend this as you lose your original. However, I'm a big fan of e-patterns you print yourself. Since I have the digital copy, I can just print this pattern again if I want it and don't feel guilty about marking up my pattern pieces. After all of this is done, all I need to do is transfer the pattern to my real fabric and do the real deal, which will be up in part 2.